What's good, YouTube? And welcome to the house. There is a huge conversation going on in the community right now about how freaking expensive competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yu-Gi-Oh! In general has become if you're headed towards regionals or YCSs, and I think it all stems from budget competitive options no longer looking very budget. You're talking about $200 if you're talking budget decks, it feels like these days, and that barrier to entry is insane. So on YouTube, Mega Capital G actually kicked off this conversation, and he was explaining, well, this is here, I'm pretty sick of it. And then Robbie entered the conversation, kind of chalking up a couple of budget options and why they don't feel that good, and looking even at rogue decks like Hero, totaling them up to be like $800, and max rarity decks being towards 4,000. What is this? Teledad and DPYGO also kicking in with, this isn't a new problem, this has been around. You don't have to look to the past Yu-Gi-Oh! Boomer days of Teledad, it's also, look at last format, Thunder Dragon could be towards an $800 to $1,000 deck. But I do think it stems to, there's just not really good budget options, which there have been through history. With ABCs, we see top list using gadgets that don't have desires and they don't have dimensional barrier. You could get those tops in a box, and you can't do that anymore. With Salmon Greats, you need stuff like Impermanence, it feels like. You need Phantasme and that sort of stuff. So I want to break down where everything happened, why it got so expensive, and how it all led up to this point. If you're newer to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Market, you might not know that February and March are the greatest months for sales in general, but we have a perfect storm here. And why they go up, used to in the past, we got a ban list in March and people would know what they have to play for the WCQ or Nationals. But now we get a later ban list on top of it usually, and we get a March reprint set that should bring some coolant. But this year we're getting cards like Needle Fiber, we're getting the Union Link, we're getting all sorts of crazy stuff, the Predaplant Link. It's going to be original cards in that set that people are going to be hunting down, and the reprints almost feel like afterthoughts this year. They're leading with Signet Mining, which was going up and now isn't that much in demand comparatively. So when we look at the core booster sets leading up, there's no new archetypes that are really lending themselves into the conversation of shaping the meta, and instead it's more generic cards that also happen to be shorter. With Ignition Assault, it's not necessarily shorter. There's 3 overprinted secrets and everything else feels like it evens out. But in the past we saw like Apollosa. This was definitely shorted, and now people are playing multiples of her even in their extra deck so that they can combine it with Extravagance for draw power and still have Apollosa. I find this ridiculous, and you need, for control decks like Altergeist and Guru Control, Extravagance for draw power in there so as to benefit, to give you that chance, that competitive edge. We look at cards like Masquerena, an ultra rare, also shorted. Weird how this term keeps coming up. $47 freaking dollars. This is crazy. And Permanence with its reprint that was also very hard to get. You want to play this in a lot of decks as the hand trap that can't get called by the grave, that can't be, just slammed, and you can also set it and it gets bonuses when you set it on the field. Yeah, pretty darn expensive, towards $50 for the ultra even. Magician Souls out of a side set. This is practically for several decks. We thought it was one at first, Spirals, but now you can play it in Lunalight. It's like that Frank's Red Hot Sauce. You can throw it on anything. But seriously, a ridiculous price. It's not shorted in the EU, it's shorted over here. And when we look through this conversation, it's even affecting Rogue when it comes to shorts. This sells the set. It's top heavy over in a side set because it's all that's competitively viable. There's not some new archetype that took over this side set. There's not something introduced. It's generically good cards that are clinging to these price points that also happen to be not as prevalent to pull within the core sets and the side sets. When you get this perfect storm leading up towards a new changing master rule also, people are grabbing and holding onto cards, expecting even those to explode because there's a huge amount of players coming back like I've never seen before. In my live streams, people who I haven't seen in years are saying, I'm back, baby, tell me what's good, tell me what's going on. And the number of players that are investing, the number of players who are trying to grab onto cards using my TCG player link in the description down below, costing you nothing extra and supporting the channel directly, of course. Well, they're rising, and the number of cards aren't necessarily rising with them. So with so many energetic players coming back that played through expensive formats, that have had expensive decks and are ready to slam down that money, well, they're disappearing off market, and they're already shorter to begin with. That causes this really insane storm to where these cards rise, and they rise. You had a chance to get this towards 60. You had this chance to get this towards 50 to 60 during the winter cool off and earlier, and things exploded like never before because of the Master Rule hype. And now the market's even learning. The lowest I think you could have got Lightning Storm during pre-sales was towards $83. The market is learning that, well, there's not much in the way of the core set of a new archetype. Plunder Patrol's no good yet. It may have a future, but it's not good now. They're learning that the sets are very top heavy, and they're going after those cards even earlier through pre-sale prices and also what they want to grab, and it's causing things to just go up to ridiculous proportions for what they do. In the past, there have been extremely budget options, and I'm glad for it. $50 decks topping regionals, it still was an anomaly, but there were eras where it was very commonplace. And when I kind of start to see where this is leaning up, where's the good archetype? Oh, Marincess, that kind of failed us. Where's the good archetype here? Oh, Unchained, that kind of failed us too. Rockets, this was a little bit late, wasn't it? Marincess again, yikes. Where's the good archetype? Oh, Plunder Patrol, it has potential for the future. That sounds a lot like UA and FA and everything, eh? I feel like they're just not slamming home runs like they used to, and it almost feels slightly on purpose. How long have we played with Salomon Greats? How long have we played with Orcas? They just got rid of 2 decks we were asking how long about, Sky Striker and Thunder Dragon, yet the top decks are still here, and cycling back in as Spiral, something that was tier 0, something that had gotten hit on 3 different ban lists, has cycled back to the top of the format. How long is it gonna take Konami to print an archetype good enough to come back in? The Nemesis are on the horizon, but I'm scared they're gonna be used like an engine similar to Crusadia. You have the side set that has the Animatia. That looks pretty promising and good. But with the Master Rule on the horizon, people are looking to old decks again. Mermail Atlanteans getting ridiculous buyouts. They're just eating up these things off of the market when they look around. Totally awesome into multiple stun decks, as well as getting summoned by Bahamut Shark. You have things just going. We need more reprint sets. I can't believe I'm gonna say this, because I was actually going to do a video before that we had too many reprint sets, but because of the Master Rule specifically, combined with the WCQ season and the reprint sets being so far off, we need something else like Dual Devastator, because the Master Rule is bringing so many things back into relevancy. I don't want Yu-Gi-Oh! To end up in a place where it cycles sets and that be the conversation. I want affordable cards for players, and Konami can make bank off of it. It's win-win for everybody. And we see Madolches and we see Dinosaurs addressed in the March set coming up. Good job, Konami, but that's not really on the forefront of everybody's mind, although it does help. You need to keep getting the staples, the good cards. You need to keep slamming those home and stop shorting them. Stop doing that. You don't need to do that. They'll rise on their own. Sign-up mining is for Cyverse, and it was hitting 50 bucks. You don't need to short these cards. You just need to keep printing them and give the average chance, and people are still going to eat them up. They're still going to fly off market, and your product's still going to have value. Pick and choose your reprints, and also give us what we need. The solution does come from Konami, and as a player, you're kind of stuck waiting either to go in on a reprint set and your deck to only have X months of relevancy. How long did you have to play Thunder Dragon after the Megatons? In relevance versus everything that it was, not very long. How long did you have to play Sky Striker after the Battles of Legend reprints? A little longer, but not very long. It was after the WCQ. So when I look at everything around, there's not a great answer other than wait and pick your places, hope Konami prints something budget for everybody, or really commit. Those are your answers, and they're not the greatest ones, and it all does stem from the perfect storm of short prints, the Master Rule change coming up, and the WCQ season hype. But let me know if you have anything to add to this discussion, because there's many more points, and it does also stem from the generic cards being what's very expensive, but there are archetypal cards, extra deck cards that do tend to go up as well. So what are you looking forward to in Yu-Gi-Oh? What do you hope comes out and over as budget so that you can play it? And where do you see Konami moving forward, since the EU did declare no more shorting, but then we have new ratios moving forward with 10 secrets per set instead of 8? What's really gonna happen to the market with it being in Konami's hands? And they do pay attention. It's very obvious, by the way. There's this argument that Konami doesn't pay attention to the secondary market. How do you think they choose their reprints and what goes into those reprint sets? Think about that for a second, and also what they choose to sell those sets. Thank you for watching today's video. I know it's a rather in-depth discussion looking at the market in general instead of specific prices and talking about, oh, this went up, that went down, but I do hope that you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed the conversation, and if you are shopping for cards, please do use that TCG player link in the description. It supports the channel directly, and I really have been appreciating it lately, and I'm going to continue giving back to you guys that are giving without even really having to try. Thank you, everybody.